Hey there, and welcome. Before we get started today, if you enjoy what we do, please think about subscribing to our channel.
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into researching and putting these discussions together for you, so your support really helps.
Okay, so today we're looking into the really fascinating story behind the Ford Motor Company, and of course, Henry Ford himself.
It's quite a journey, how one person's vision, and yeah, their setbacks too, completely changed the car industry and really everyday life.
Exactly. And if you're someone who likes getting a solid understanding of big topics, maybe finding those surprising facts or aha moments without, wading through tons of dense text, then this should be right up your alley.
Definitely. It helps to picture the scene first. Late 19th century America. Getting around wasn't easy. Horses, maybe trains.
Cars were starting to appear, but they were playthings for the rich, weren't they? Or for racing.
Absolutely. Expensive, not really practical for most people. The thought of an ordinary person owning a car seemed pretty out there.
So, into this world, Henry Ford is born, July 30th, 1863, Dearborn, Michigan, on a farm.
Right, and he was the oldest of 6 kids, so everyone just assumed he'd take over the family farm.
But he wasn't keen on farming, was he? And there's that famous quote.
Yeah, I never had any particular love for the farm. It was the mother on the farm I loved. Tells you a lot. Farming just wasn't his thing.
And his schooling was pretty limited, too. Finished after 8th grade.
That's right. But he was clearly driven by, well, self-learning. He had this intense fascination with how things worked, especially machines.
You see that really early on, the story about the pocket watch. His dad gives him one when he's 12.
And he immediately takes it apart. And then, crucially, puts it back together again. Became the local watch fixer pretty quickly.
But the big moment, the real spark, seems to have been seeing a steam engine at 13. He called it an obsession.
It really captured his imagination. And by 15, he'd actually built his own steam engine, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that mechanical world just pulled him in. Then, sadly, his mother, Mary, died. They were close.
Seems like that loss might have solidified his desire to leave the farm, Too many memories, maybe, and it wasn't his path anyway.
So, fast forward a bit. He's 16, and he heads off to Detroit. Against his father's wishes, importantly.
And Detroit back then was buzzing, a real industrial center, mostly powered by steam.
His first job didn't exactly go smoothly, though. Michigan Car Company works. Lasted less than a week.
Yeah, fired after 6 days. But he landed on his feet, got an apprenticeship at James Flower and Brothers machine shop. Pay wasn't great, apparently.
So he had to supplement his income.
Right. He took a night job fixing watches. Back to that old skill.
Wow. So he's working 2 jobs, basically.
Seems like it. But still finding time to learn about machines, that drive was clearly there early on.
He actually went back to the farm for a while, around age 19, but still didn't like the farming part.
No, instead he started tinkering with the farm machinery. His dad had bought this portable steam engine, and Henry got really into figuring that out.
Became quite the expert, apparently. Neighbors started paying him to fix their steam engines.
Exactly. And that led to a real job offer from the Westinghouse Engine Company, setting up and servicing their steam tractors across southern Michigan.
So he's really building practical skills now, getting his hands dirty.
Definitely. And this period was important personally, too. He met and married Claire Jane Bryant.
And his dad gave them land as a wedding gift. 40 acres.
Yep. But interestingly, Henry didn't farm it.
No. Instead, they moved back to Detroit in 1891. And this is where he learns about a different kind of engine.
Right, the gas engine. He read about it in a British magazine, the one developed by Nicholas Otto.
And this is a big leap from steam, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Steam engines needed time to build pressure. Gas engines used internal combustion, much quicker startup, more efficient.
And the electric spark ignition caught his eye, specifically.
It seems so. He saw the potential. And to really understand this new technology, especially the electrical side, he got a job at the Edison Illuminating Company.
Working nights again.
Yep. Officially, his job was fixing their steam engine, the one powering the plant.
But that gave him downtime.
Exactly. Plenty of free time to study electricity and these newer engines. It was during this time his son, Edsel, was born too, and he got promoted to chief engineer.
So things were moving forward.
Yeah.
And then the breakthrough.
1893. He builds his first working gas engine, a huge milestone.
All that tinkering and learning finally coming together, and that engine paved the way for his first car, right?
It did. 3 years later, June 4th, 1896, he finishes the Quadricycle.
The Quadricycle sounds basic.
It was pretty rudimentary, built on bicycle wheels, powered by that gas engine. Had some issues, though.
Like what?
Well, only 2 forward gears, no reverse gear, and it overheated badly because he hadn't figured out a cooling system yet.
Ah, so part of the learning process.
Absolutely. He identified the problem, added a cooling system later. He eventually sold that first quadricycle for $200.
And use the money to build another car.
Yep, his second experimental car. This time he actually gave some support from the mayor of Detroit.
And this led to meeting an investor.
Right. He gave a test drive to William Murphy, a wealthy lumber guy. Murphy was impressed.
Impressed enough to back him.
Yes. On August 5th, 1899, they formed the Detroit Automobile Company, Ford's first real business venture in cars.
But it didn't work out, did it?
No, it failed pretty quickly. There were disagreements, it seems. The investors wanted passenger cars ready for sale, but Ford felt they needed more development.
Plus production issues.
Yeah, relying on lots of different suppliers caused delays. They were just too slow. The delivery wagon, their main product, took 6 months to build. They only made about 20 cars in 2 years.
So Ford got fired. Again.
He did, but he had that quote about failure being an opportunity.
Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. Quite the mindset.
It really is, and he pivoted. Instead of production cars, he focused on racing.
Why racing?
Well, it was a great way to get attention, prove his designs were fast and reliable, attract new investors.
Did it work?
Oh, yeah. His car beat Alexander Winton's racer, which was a big deal. Winton was a major name. That victory really raised Ford's profile.
So new investors came calling.
They did. This led to the second company involving Ford, confusingly also initially called the Ford Motor Company, with him as chief engineer.
But trouble brewed again. Same issue.
Pretty much. Investors wanted passenger cars. Ford was still drawn to the excitement and publicity of racing.
And they brought someone else in.
Right. Henry Martin Leland, a precision machinist, supposedly to help with production, but Ford felt sidelined.
And he left. Famously say,
I resign, determined never again to put myself under orders. He was done taking instructions.
And Leland? What happened with that company?
Well, Leland took the remnants of that second Ford venture and turned it into Cadillac.
Wow. Okay, so Ford's out again, but still focused on racing.
Absolutely. He teamed up with Tom Cooper, a former cyclist, and they built the Ford 999 Racer.
The 999, that sounds fast.
It was. And they got Barney Oldfield to drive it. Apparently, Oldfield had never even driven a car before the race.
Seriously. And he won.
He did. Beat Winton again. The 999 became legendary. Ford's cars started breaking American speed records soon after, hitting over 90 miles per hour in 1904.
So his reputation as a top car designer was cemented now.
Definitely. And that finally gave him the leverage to start his third attempt at a car company, the one that stuck.
Who backed him this time?
11 investors. A key one was Alexander Young Malcolmson, a Detroit coal dealer. They formed Ford and Malcolmson Limited initially.
Which then became the Ford Motor Company we know today in 1902.
Exactly. And this time, Ford had learned a lot. He had a very clear vision.
The car for the great multitude, right? Affordable for ordinary people.
Precisely. He wanted to use the best materials, simplest design, best workers, and make it affordable for anyone with a decent salary. He was good at finding people who shared that vision too.
So they started designing again.
Yeah.
Did it take long?
They went through a lot of iterations, more than 20 designs apparently, before settling on the Model A.
And they kept refining things over the next few years, leading to the Model N.
Right. But the really revolutionary part wasn't just the car itself, it was how they planned to build it in volume.
This is where the assembly line comes in.
This is it. Remembering the problems with suppliers from his first company was key, but the real inspiration came from an unlikely place.
The slaughterhouse.
Yeah, in Chicago. He saw how they processed carcasses on a moving line, each worker doing one specific task, and a light bulb went off.
Apply that to building cars. Instead of one person building a whole car.
The car moves, and each worker does their one piece. He started experimenting with this around 1904, built his own factory. By 1906, with the Model N, they had a rudimentary version going.
And it made a difference immediately.
Oh, yeah. Production increased fivefold, even though the line was still, a work in progress.
And he built his own plant in 1905 to make the parts themselves. Engines, transmissions.
Controlling the supply chain, vertical integration, very important. Then came another key discovery, vanadium steel.
What was special about that?
Much stronger, but also lighter than previous steel. Perfect for making a durable but affordable car.
And that went into his next big thing, The Model T.
The Model T. And you have to appreciate his business thinking at the time. That quote about service.
A business absolutely devoted to service will have only one worry about profits. They will be embarrassingly large. Quite confident.
And he was right. The Model T launched, priced around $850 initially. Still a fair bit of money then, maybe like $21,000 today. But it was a massive hit.
How massive?
15,000 orders almost immediately. Ford Motor Company shot to #1 in America.
They needed a bigger factory then.
Definitely. Built the Highland Park plant in 1910, and by 1913, the moving assembly line was fully operational there.
And the impact on production time was huge.
Dramatic. Building a Model T went from about 12 hours down to just 90 minutes. 90.
Incredible. So production numbers must have exploded.
Absolutely. By 1914, they were making over 300,000 cars a year. That was more than all other car makers combined.
Wow. And the Model T population just grew and grew.
Phenomenally. Between 1910 and 1916, production went from maybe 20,000 a year to nearly 1 million. Some estimate half the cars on Earth were Model Ts by then.
And he kept making it cheaper, too.
Yeah, that was key to his vision. As production volume went up, he lowered the price. That initial $850 dropped below $400 by 1916.
But the assembly line work itself,
Yeah,
it was repetitive, maybe demoralizing.
it could be. High turnover was becoming a problem. Ford recognized this. He needed a stable, motivated workforce to keep the lines running.
And this led to another huge innovation, but on the labor side.
The $5 day. In 1914, he basically doubled workers' wages.
$5 a day, that was huge back then.
Unheard of. Other industrialists scoffed, said he'd go bankrupt.
But it worked.
It worked brilliantly. Workers flocked to Ford from all over the country. It stabilized his workforce. He also cut working hours and added a third shift for 24-hour production.
So competitors had to follow suit eventually.
They were forced to raise wages just to keep their own workers from leaving for Ford. It fundamentally changed industrial labor practices.
And created customers for his own cars, too. Clever.
Very clever. His principle was clear. Make the best quality goods possible at the lowest cost possible, paying the highest wages possible.
Then in 1919, he took full control, bought out all the other investors.
Became the sole owner of the biggest car company in the world, made Edsel president, but Henry was still clearly the boss.
But that total control had a downside later, didn't it, with the Model T?
It did. He became incredibly resistant to changing it. He believed the Model T was perfection, the only car people needed.
Even his tastes were changing. People wanted more style, maybe more comfort, like Chevrolet was offering.
Exactly. His executives, even Edsel, tried to tell him they needed a new model, but Henry wouldn't hear it. That single-mindedness that drove his success was now, well, holding him back.
Until sales forced the issue.
Right. By the late 1920s, sales were dropping significantly. He finally had to stop Model T production and design something new.
Which was the Model A, released in 1927.
Correct. Produced at a new, even bigger factory complex, the Rouge plant in Michigan.
The Rouge, that was something else, wasn't it? Everything in one place.
An industrial marvel. Raw materials came in one end, finished cars rolled out the other. Iron ore, coal, sand. Everything needed. The world's largest factory.
But even with the Model A, Ford struggled to regain that dominance.
The market had changed. His singular control wasn't adapting quickly enough to diverse consumer demands. By 1936, Ford was down to third place in the U.S. market.
Behind GM and Chrysler.
Yep. He did introduce the innovative V8 engine, which was a big deal technically, but it wasn't enough to reclaim the top spot.
Then came the Depression.
Which hit everyone hard. Layoffs, pay cuts at Ford too. Then a personal blow, Edsel died in 1943.
That must have been devastating for Henry.
Profoundly so. Henry kept running the company himself for another couple of years, well into his 80s.
Before finally passing the reins.
To his grandson, Henry Ford II, in 1945. Henry Sr. retired then and passed away 2 years later in 1947.
He had that quote about life experiences making us bigger.
Life is a series of experiences. We must learn that the setbacks and grieves which we endure help us in our marching onward. A reflective view after such a tumultuous life.
And the company he built endures. Still a major player globally.
Absolutely. Worth around $70 billion today. It's an incredible legacy.
So looking back, it's just this story of relentless drive, isn't it? Innovation fueled by overcoming failure, but also maybe hindered by stubbornness later on.
Yeah, that blend is fascinating. He wasn't perfect, but his impact on the auto industry, on manufacturing, on wages, on just how people lived, it's immense. From that farm boy to a global force.
It really makes you think, How much can one person's determination, especially when they learn from their mistakes, actually change the world?
And it leads to the question, what parts of our world today are maybe just waiting for that kind of transformative vision, that kind of stubborn innovator to come along? Something to ponder. Thanks for exploring that amazing story with me.
My pleasure. A lot to unpack there.